We'll start in 2 minutes. Yes, good evening. Okay, we'll start the class. This is the week 8 of Structure Analysis 1 taught by Professor Amit Shah. I am Trisha Chakraborty, one of the course teaching assistants. I'm a PhD student at the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. I'll start with a recap of the previous weeks. Phase 1, of which consisted of the first 6 weeks, were analysis of determinate structures. So determinate structures. Today we'll have take a deeper look at indeterminacy. But simply speaking, determinate structures are those that can just be solved by the equations of equilibrium. So they have no redundancy in them. It means that if something fails in the structure, like one support reaction fails, the structure will become unstable. So indeterminate structures, the structures that we see around us are all indeterminate. They have various degrees of indeterminacy or redundancy. The more degree of indeterminacy is there, the more safe is the structure, but it also becomes difficult to solve. So we started with looking at determinate structures. In week 1, we looked at the types of internal forces. There are 4 types: shear force, bending moment, axial force, and torsional moment. Then the common classifications of elements. The commonest ones are trusses, beams, and frames. They are categorized not by their physical appearance but by the kind of force we expect them to undergo. So trusses only undergo axial force, beams only undergo shear force and bending moment, and frame elements undergo all three of them. Mostly we are focused on trusses and beams, but the basic laws that govern trusses and beams also extend to frames. So you might have come across frame questions. And boundary conditions. There are various kinds: hinge support, roller support, fixed support, and so on. And structural indeterminacy, we took a brief look in the first week, but we'll look at it more this week. And one of the most important topics, bending moment and shear force diagrams. It is the force type or stress type response in beams that we have looked at. And in one second. In week 2, we looked at the force or stress type of reaction response of trusses. So we looked at how trusses are idealized as in this like in the form of 2D trusses, just straight lines joined, forming triangles. Stability of trusses and solving member forces. So week 1, we looked at the force and force. Bending moment is also a type of force response. It is, though it's a moment, we broadly call it force responses. So this is the force response of a beam. This is the force response of a truss. And then the other type of response. Also, there were two methods of joints and sections. And then we moved on to the displacement or strain type of response. So the response of any structure when it undergoes loading can be categorized into these two types: force response and displacement response. So from week 3 onwards, we looked at the displacement type responses. So first we looked at the truss ones. The unit load method to determine displacement in a truss. It is based on the principle of virtual work. In week 4 and week 5, we looked at the deflection of beams. So there are several methods: the elastic curve equation method, which is the most direct, straightforward, and lengthy method, but it gives us the entire deflection profile along the entire length of the beam. And two shortcut methods, that are moment area method and conjugate beam method, they are they are ultimately based on the elastic equation method, so they'll give the same answer, but they are simpler frameworks that have been created to get to the answer faster. And you need some practice in both of these methods, so when you get MCQ type of questions, to identify which points I'm going to consider, especially for the moment area method, if you can identify the proper 2 points, you can get the answer in one step. But otherwise you will have to go by trial and error method, or you can just find out the entire equation and put the required x in it. Week 6 was is it's one of the isolated topics, influence line diagram. It is an isolated topic from the previous lectures and from the lectures after it. So influence line diagram is the diagram that expresses or shows the response, a particular response in a beam when the load is moving. So it's the section that is varying, unlike in bending moment and shear force diagram, where it is the in bending moment and shear force diagram, the sorry the in bending moment and shear force diagram, the diagram varies along the section of the beam. But in influence line diagram, the what we represent along the x-axis is basically the position of the load. Muller-Breslau's principle is a technique to draw these ILDs qualitatively, and these are the applications to find the absolute maximum bending moment and shear force under a point load or a series of point loads or a uniformly distributed load, which can be greater or lesser than the span. So all these three you have to, a few examples should be enough for you to understand how you're supposed to place the loads to get the critical conditions. Why do we need the absolute maximum? Because when we are designing see the this course structure analysis, or this topic structure analysis comes before design. So what we have is, we have the loads, overall loads coming on a structure. We need to undertake structural analysis so that we find out the critical forces or stresses that are going to be developed in my structure, or the critical displacement or deflection. And then I'm going to design the beam. I'm just saying beam, but it could be any structural element. I'm going to design it such that, with such a material or with such a cross section, such that the capacity of the beam should be greater than the absolute maximums developed by the loading that is going to come on it. So absolute maximum is important, because I'm going to suppose I have a beam in a simply supported beam which has UDL. So you know from the bending moment diagram that the moment is maximum at the center, at the midpoint. So at the corners, at the near the support, there is some bending moment. At the midpoint, there is a larger quantity of bending moment. So if I tell you that, give a standard section and material to the beam, like it will be a uniform beam. So of course you are going to design it so that it is enough to withstand the center, the bending moment developed at the center. Because otherwise, the if suppose it's at the center, it's 100 kilonewton meter, and then it goes to zero on the other ends. So there is one section where the bending moment will probably be 50. But if you design the beam such that its capacity is 60, then it's not going to be enough for the center part. So either, like in real life designs, like we generally don't make it uniform completely, so we vary the capacities. But in a simple term, if I tell you to make a uniform beam, you need to know the maximum responses so that you can design against it. And then phase 2 is the second half of the course is about analysis of indeterminate structures. In the previous week, we looked at there was a review of degree of structural indeterminacy, an introduction to force and displacement methods, which are the two categories of methods that we use, Maxwell-Betty's reciprocal theorem, and method of consistent deformations, which is a force method. We saw it being applied to some beams, and today we are going to look at this method of consistent deformations further into applied to frames and trusses. So structural indeterminacy, structures that cannot be analyzed using statics or equations of equilibrium only are called indeterminate structures. They require other material properties to be solved. They require other material properties to be solved, and the degree of indeterminacy is equal to the number of unknown reactions minus the number of equations of equilibrium. So they are split into two categories: external and internal indeterminacy. External indeterminacy is the total number of independent support reactions minus the total number of available equations of static equilibrium. And internal indeterminacy is the total number of internal reactions minus the available equations of equilibrium. And the degree of structural indeterminacy is a summation of the two. So generally we approach like we find out the external indeterminacy, we find out the total degree, and we subtract this from this to get the internal indeterminacy, because total number of internal reactions is not always intuitive. Some examples which we have already looked at: this is a cantilever beam. This has three support reactions, and this, okay, it's not, since this is a beam, since the loading is also given, it is in only the downward direction, no axial loading. So this support reaction actually gives us two support reaction. This support, so it gives a, it restrains the vertical displacement and it restrains the into the plane rotation. And the equations of equilibrium are also two. Since I'm not considering the x direction forces, the equations of equilibrium are sigma fy equal to 0 and sigma mz equal to 0. So this is a determinate structure. The degree of indeterminacy is 0. This is a propped cantilever. Here there are two reactions here, and there is one extra reaction here in the upward direction. But the equations of equilibrium are two, so this is 1 degree indeterminate. This frame, this has this has three support reactions here, and since this is a frame, you have to consider both the x direction and y direction responses. So this has three reactions, this has three reactions, and the number of equations of equilibrium in the 2D plane is 3. So the degree of indeterminacy is 3 plus 3, 6 minus 3, so 3. And this is another frame. These are hinge support. So two here, two support, two reactions here, two reactions here, and three equations. So this is 1 degree indeterminate. There are some rules that help us find the degree of indeterminacy if it is not as easy as these ones. These ones are just, you can find out just by looking at them, but there are some other rules, like for plane truss, 2D truss, you should see, it's not necessary you should remember this formula, but as I keep saying, if you are going to give a competitive exam like GATE or the ESC exams, these, it's better if you have these memorized. So by with practice, you will anyway automatically have these in memory. So for plane truss, 2D truss, DS, this degree of static indeterminacy is the total unknown forces external plus internal minus total equation of equilibrium available. So what are the external forces? External unknowns. The external unknowns are the RE, that is the number of support reactions. RE is number of external reactions. What are my internal unknown forces? That is the number of members, because we know that in a truss, every member only undergoes axial force. It can be tension or it can be compression, but it is just one magnitude. When we were looking at method of sections or joints, we saw that every member corresponds to only one magnitude of force. So M is the number of members, that is the number of internal reactions. And the total equations of equilibrium is always 3 here, because in a 2D frame, the equations of equilibrium will be 3. Oh, okay. Sorry. That this is the number of equations of equilibrium in the, if we don't consider external internal force, it will be 3. But when we are solving a truss joint by joint, at each joint we have two equations. Remember, the way we used method of joints was, at every joint we had sigma fx equal to 0 and sigma fy equal to 0. So that is how total equations of equilibrium will be 2j. J is the number of joints. So m plus re minus 2j. It is in, you can understand this clearly. If ds is 0, the structure is statically determinate, which is what we have looked at so far. If ds is greater than 0, the truss is statically indeterminate. It is safer, and we will have to apply some other methods to solve it. And if ds is less than 0, the truss is unstable. So we don't look at unstable structures. We can only analyze stable structures, because unstable structures move. Like if a truss is unstable and you put a small force on it, it will move away. So it will not undergo any stress or any force. So there is no point in solving it. And space truss is a 2D truss. Similarly, the formula can be extended into M plus RE. So RE is still the number of support reactions. M is the number of forces. Even M is the number of members. And even in a 3D truss, the members can be inclined in any direction, but it is still, after all, a truss member. So even in the 3D plane, it can only undergo axial force along its own length. So the number of internal forces remain M. And but the number of equations of equilibrium available increases, because at each joint I have three equations now: sigma fx equal to 0, sigma fy equal to 0, and sigma fz equal to 0. So that's why this becomes 3j. So let's look at examples. For a 2D truss shown here, find the degree of static indeterminacy. So This is the first. This is the approach that we've discussed. Let us look at that first. DS is m plus re minus 2j. So how many members are there? One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So here it's 7. And the number of reactions, there is a hinge. There are 3 hinge supports. So there is 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Both all 3 of these have 2 support reactions each. So 6. And the number of joints is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 2j is 10. So this is 3-degree indeterminate. This is the overall degree of indeterminacy. Now there is another method, like the another approach you can have is you find out the degree of you find out the degree of external indeterminacy and internal indeterminacy and then add them. So for external indeterminacy, what did we look at? What was the definition? Let's see. The definition is total number of independent support reactions minus total number of available equations of static equilibrium. So the number of external support reactions is 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the number of number of equations of equilibrium in the 2D plane is 3. So this is 3. So the degree of external indeterminacy is 3, and for degree of for degree of internal indeterminacy, this is another formula, m minus 2j minus 3, because these 2j are the, so see, when you consider the internal forces, we get two equations at every joint, but we have to subtract 3 because the overall 3 equations of equilibrium are not really available here. They are already incorporated in the 2j. So you have to, this equation becomes m, which is the number of internal unknowns, minus 2j minus 3. So it is 7 minus 10 minus 3. So this is 0. So this structure is internally determinate, but externally it is 3-degree indeterminate. So you add up and you get 3 again. Like from the second approach, we directly get the overall degree of indeterminacy. In the first approach, we get it in split into two terms. So this could also be like, it's not necessary that always the degree of internal indeterminacy will be a 0. It can be 1, 2. We'll see. Look at other examples. So let's look at this. What is the total degree of static indeterminacy, both internal and external, of the cantilever plane truss shown in the figure? So why is it called a cantilever truss? It's because a cantilever conceptually is a structure that is that has in the horizontal direction, it is restrained on one side and the other side is free to displace completely free. So this is a cantilever plane truss. Cantilever beams are easier to visualize, but if you look at this side is completely restrained because this is hinged, so there can be no displacement, no rotation on this end, and here it is completely free to rotate and displace. So the first approach is, okay, so the number of first, let us get these values. M is the number of members, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Look at one thing. See, this center point, you could like from this diagram you could determine this as two members, or you can take this as one member. So what the rule is, generally if they mean it to be these to be two other different members, they will put a dark circle here in the form of a node like this kind. Here the nodes are very clearly visible because they have made it dark. In case they don't make it dark and two members cross over, you have to assume that this is the same member. Okay, so if this is another member, so the cross members, there are four of them inside. So m is 13. J is number of joints, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So these midpoints we do not take as joints since they are not darkened. And the number of external reactions are, this is hinge, so 2 plus 2, 4. First approach, DSC, the degree of external indeterminacy is R minus 3, RE minus 3 is the 4 minus 3, 1. And DSI is number of members 13 minus 2J minus 3. So 2J is 14 minus 3 is 11. So the degree of internal indeterminacy is 2. So basically what this degree of internal indeterminacy, you can, so if you want to interpret it, I can I can explain to you in one way, is that, remember when we were looking at stability of trusses, we saw that in a truss all the members should be connected in such a way that it forms a triangle, because if there is a rectangle or a polygonal shape inside the truss that is not of four sides or more than that, then then there are some kind of loading that can make it fold in upon itself. So then the truss will not be stable. So what we need for any rectangular part is that there should be one cross diagonal member. But in, let's see here, there is one member and then there is another member. So even if you took one of these members away, the truss would still be stable. So this one of these members adds 1 degree of internal indeterminacy. And similarly, in this rectangle also, there is one additional member. So even if you remove one from here and one from here, my truss will be statically determinate, like internally determinate. But also you have to look at this the degree of internal indeterminacy is 2. So it means, like, intuitively it means that even if I remove two members, that my truss will be stable. But that is not a ground rule. So if you remove this member and you also remove this member, then the truss will become unstable, because then here a rectangle is forming. So this part becomes completely unstable and this part remains overly stable. So that is not how it works. The degree of internal indeterminacy, to make it determinate, you have to see how which members are possible to be removed. You can only remove certain members. Otherwise, if you remove these two, or if you remove this and this, it will become unstable. So that's something to keep in mind if you are asked. I don't think this will be asked ever, that how can you make a indeterminate truss into a determinate truss, but it's for your concept. So the total degree of indeterminacy is 1 plus 2, 3. And the second approach is a direct formula, m plus re minus 2j, that you will also get 3 from that. You can just, you see that this formula and this formula add up to give this, so they are basically the same approach. Degree of static indeterminacy for the rigid frame. So there's an internal hinge. We know that an internal hinge is a point where the bending moment has to be 0. From both sides, you can come and see the bending moment will be 0. So m is 5. So see, when there is a hinge, it becomes two members. I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. So then when there is a hinge or when there is a support, you have to take two different members: 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And the number of joints is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So internal hinges and support reactions are all considered to be separate joints. And the number of external reactions is, this is a fixed support. So since this is a frame, even at fixed supports, you have to take three unknowns. So three here, three here, three here, and this is a roller, so it has only one reaction. So 3 plus 3 plus 3, 1 here. And there is, in the formula, there is something called RR, which is a kind of internal reaction for the internal hinge. So this will be 1. DSC, degree of external indeterminacy, the formula remains same whether it's a beam or a frame or a truss. It's RE minus 3. So it's the number of external support reactions minus the total number of equations of equilibrium. So it's 10 minus 3, 7. And DSI, the degree of internal indeterminacy, is 3C minus. Okay, I just have to look at what this C is. This will be part of some formula. One second. One second. Okay, so C is the number of loops or closed paths in the frame. So here we will see that this is considered a loop or closed path. So this one is an open frame. So C is 0 and RR is 1. So this DSI is minus 1, and so DS is total 7 minus 1, 6. And from the second approach, the formula is this: 3M plus RE minus 3J minus RR. That is also 6. Another example, this is a 2D frame. There's an internal hinge here. So the number of members, if there's an internal hinge, you have to consider two separate members. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. M is 11. J is 8 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. RE is 3 because there is one hinge support, one roller support, and RR is 1 since there is one internal hinge. And the number of closed loops here is, this is 1, this is 1, this is 1, and this is 1. So C is 4. DSC, you follow the formula. From this formula, we get 3M plus RE minus 3J minus RR is 11. This is a 3D hybrid frame. I don't think this much detail is required, but anyway, from the concepts remain same. There is some differences in the formula. Okay. So RR has, okay. Let's just look at this. This RR is the number of reactions released. So there is a formula for that. In 3D space, it is 3 m dash minus 1, where m dash is the number of members connected by the internal hinge. So generally, in the examples we have seen so far, there are only two members connected by the internal hinge. That is why the RR was 1 in the 2D plane. And in the 3D plane, it is 3 into m dash minus 1. So m dash is 2 here, 3 into 2 minus 1 is 3. So the number of members, the other things remain the same. The number of members is 9. RE is, there are two fixed supports, so 3 and 2 from here. So sorry, in 3D space, fixed support provides six support reactions. Three is three translational and three rotational. So six from here, six from here. And in the 3D flame, hinge support provides three reactions in the three translational directions, but roller support still provides only one. Okay, because roller support, the concept is that it will provide a restraint perpendicular to the surface on which it lies upon. So this is 6 plus 6 plus 3 plus 3, that is 18. Number of joints is 9, and the rest of it, the number of closed loop is 1. This is one closed loop, so the rest of it remains same here as well. In the 2D plane, the definition of RR is sigma m dash minus 1. So m dash is the number of reactions, number of members joining at the, like meeting at the hinge. So for this hinge, it's one. There are three members meeting here. So from this it's two, from this it's two, and you have to add them. So it's the RR here is 4. And if this was in the 3D plane, then in this formula a 3 would be multiplied, like we saw here. If there were more number of internal hinges, we would have to add this 3 into m dash minus 1 for each internal hinge there is. It's also similar. C here will be 1 because there is one closed loop, the rest of it is open. And count the number of members: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. The number of joints is 12. RE is, this is a 2D plane, so 2D frame. So the number of support reactions at each fixed support is 3. So 4 into 3, 12, and do the rest of it as we have looked at. For the rigid plane frame, okay, there are some kind of different support reactions here, so let's look at this properly. So the m is 14, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. It's easy to understand. The number of joints is 4, 4, 4, so 12. Now the support and the number of closed loops is clearly 1, 2, 3. Now the number of external reactions, look at these kinds. We know the fixed support, this is a fixed support, it has 3 support reactions. This is a hinge support, it has 2. This is a roller support, it has 1. But look at this kind of support. What this kind of roller, a roller with 3 wheels, what it does it, you just imagine something. Imagine a roller. Imagine this kind of whatever is shown here. Imagine you keep a book on top of 3 pencils lying. So you will see that, of course, this direction, it is going to provide a restraint in the upward direction, which is perpendicular to the surface. This is the surface, so it provides the restraint in the upward direction. But when there are 3 wheels, it also restrains the rotation. Unlike if you had 2 wheels, you can imagine that it can rotate. So originally in a roller support with 2 wheels, there is no rotational restraint. But in a roller with 3 wheels, there is a rotational restraint. So the moment at this, there will be a non-zero bending moment at this point, and the rotation will be 0. So it provides two support reactions: one in the upward direction, one in the into the plane moment. So support reactions will be 3 plus 2 plus 2, 2 plus 1 plus 2, that is 8. So after that, the formulas are the same. So keep in mind that a roller with 2 wheels and a roller with 3 wheels are not the same thing. Now we'll look at this that we have already looked at in the previous class, the basic differences in the concept of force methods and the flex and the displacement methods. So force methods are also called as compatibility methods or flexibility methods. Here, the redundant forces are chosen as unknowns, and additional equations are obtained by considering the geometric conditions imposed on the deformation of the structure, which are the compatibility conditions. So we will so in a propped cantilever, there is a fixed support and there is one roller at the end. So suppose I say that the roller support, we know that it is 1 degree indeterminate, so it has one redundant external reaction. And I suppose I say that the upward force, or the y direction force in the prop is my redundant force. So what I do is I remove it. I remove the redundant force, and I solve the structure once without it. So I solve a normal cantilever beam, and then I solve it again with only the I take that as an unknown force. So suppose R, I then I again solve a cantilever beam with only an R applying on the tip, and then I have to, and my compatibility condition here will be that since I have removed that roller support, what means is that I have removed one restraint. The rest that and that restraint in displacement terms is that free end was not free to displace in the y direction. So I have to impose, once I've solved these two structures, I have to impose a compatibility condition that there can be no net displacement in the y direction at the tip. So that is how we looked at some examples last class on that. And there are some methods. This is a method of consistent deformation basically that I described. There are some other methods which we don't look at in details. Virtual work or unit load method, strain energy method, method of minimum potential energy, flexibility matrix method, and okay, were there any questions from the previous part so far? Okay. Then there is another class of equations called displacement, equilibrium, or stiffness methods. They are broadly called displacement methods. So these are, see, displacement and force are two parts, the two types of responses that a structure can have, and flexibility and stiffness are basically inverses of each other. So stiffness in a spring, a stiffness is a single value, right? We know F is equal to kx. So stiffness is that property which, for the same force applied on a material, the amount the amount it resists displacement is that property called stiffness. So the stiffer a structure is, suppose I have a stiff structure and I have a less stiff structure. If I apply the same force on them, the stiffer structure will resist more, so it will undergo lesser displacement. That is how what is the equation says. F equal to kx, and this property k is stiffness, and flexibility is termed as like 1 by k, just the opposite. So flexibility and stiffness are inverses of each other. We will look at stiffness matrix. We will encounter them stiffness matrices somewhere in the course, and flexibility matrix is just the inverse of that matrix. And this term equilibrium and compatibility that we say, they are the two types of like restraints, or you can say in a structure. Equilibrium are the force kind of restraints, which means that if I have a if I have a moment restraint at one point, the rotation at that point is zero. It means that it provides some support moment, so that part cannot rotate. That is called equilibrium. And compatibility means that there can be no discontinuity in the structure. So if I find the displacement from one end and the other end, to maintain continuity in the structure, the displacement at there can only be one displacement value at one point. There can be only one rotation value at one point. Those are the compatibility conditions. They are both, equilibrium and compatibility are both conditions, you can say, to maintain stability in a structure. So look at these: force, compatibility and flexibility are categorized as one, and displacement, equilibrium, and stiffness are categorized in the other one. Here, what the basic approach is, displacements of joints are taken as unknowns. Here, we took the redundant forces as unknowns. Here, we take the displacements of joints as unknowns, and equilibrium equations are expressed in terms of these displacements and internal loads. These equations are solved to give the actual joint displacements from which redundant forces can be calculated. There are three methods, all of which are very important: moment distribution method, slope deflection methods, and stiffness matrix method. These three are the topics covered in the last 3 weeks of this course, week 10, 11, and 12. But now, today, we are still looking at force methods. So, this is just shown in a tabular form. In force method, unknowns are taken as internal member forces or reactions. In displacement methods, unknowns are taken as joint displacements. In force methods, to find unknowns, compatibility conditions are written, and in the displacement method, to find unknowns, joint equilibrium conditions are written. See, here compatibility equations are written, here equilibrium equations are written. That's why these displacement methods are also called as equilibrium methods, and force methods are also called as compatibility methods. So the number of equations needed here are degree of static indeterminacy, and the number of equations needed in this method is the degree of kinematic indeterminacy. So of course, if the degree of static indeterminacy is less than the degree of kinematic indeterminacy, I will choose this method, the force method, because then I'll have less number of unknowns to solve. And the reverse here, when the degree of static indeterminacy is higher than the degree of kinematic indeterminacy, I will go for displacement methods. Analysis of this indeterminate thrust by method of consistent deformation. We go step by step. Determine the force in member AC of thrust shown. AE is same for all members. A is the cross-sectional area and E is the Young's modulus. You know Young's modulus is a material property. Cross-sectional area is a geometric property. Every member or everything really are identified by these two inherent kinds of properties: geometric properties and material properties. Young's modulus, you know that in the stress strain curve, it is the slope of the stress strain curve basically. So this is a truss. There is a hinge support here, a roller support here, and there are 6 members here. So let's look at this. The truss is. So what the formula that we had is there are one, two, three. No, there is. This is not a joint. One, two, three, four. There are four joints. There are 6 members, and there are three support reactions. So if you put it in that m plus re minus 2j formula, you'll find this is 1 degree indeterminate. So 9 minus 8. 8 is a 2j. 9 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 plus 3. 6 is m. Re is 3. So 6 plus 3 minus 8. The principle now I will now this is a method of consistent deformation that we are looking at. Last week we looked at beams, so this week we are looking at trusses. The force in member AC is to be determined. So member AC is chosen as redundant. This member. So just like we discussed earlier, for a truss to be internally stable, or it should form triangles. Now, even if I remove this AC member, you will see that the truss is still internally determinate, and externally it is anyway determinate because it has three support reactions and three equations of equilibrium. So this requires. So I am assuming AC is redundant. So this requires cutting this member so that it cannot sustain a force, making the truss statically determinate and stable. So remove this. I remove this. I cut this. So assume that this does not take any take any force anymore, and the pair of internal forces will arise here, FAC, which will cancel out. Now I am going to write the compatibility equation. See, with reference to member AC, we require the relative displacement delta AC. Here, see, I've cut the member, but for compatibility, the displacement delta AC, which occurs at the ends of the cut member AC due to the force, there is a force here, plus the relative displacement FAC, small FACAC, caused by the redundant force acting alone, has to be equal to 0. So it means that then what it basically means is that there can be no displacement here, no net displacement here, just like what we did for the beam. So primary, this is the primary structure. This is the in this redundant structure. What we do is we apply a force here, FAC, and uh, we'll look at the example further. The flexibility FACAC is the flexibility coefficient, which represents the relative displacement of the cut ends of the member AC caused by a real unit load acting at the cut ends of the member AC. So my equation is 0 is delta AC is the see there was no member here, and I was applying a load here. So there is some delta AC here plus, and in this structure this I remove this load just as we did for the beam. In the secondary structure we remove the original applied force and we replace it by a unit load. So here there is a unit load FAC, and small FACAC is the flexibility coefficient. So this is the displacement contribution at this point from this structure, and delta AC is the displacement contribution from this primary structure. Adding them, it has to be 0. Algebraically adding them, it has to be 0. The term FACAC and delta AC will be computed using the method of virtual work, like we did in week 3. I think we looked at how to find the displacements in a truss using the principle of virtual work, or the unit load method basically. So for delta AC, we require application of the real load for 400 and a virtual unit force acting at the cut ends of the member AC. So let's solve it. This is 400. So if you solve the support reactions, you will see this is 400, 300, 300. And you remember in the in the unit load method or in the method of virtual work, what we had to do is we made a table. And let's look at that once. Yeah, so this is the table. So what I have to do is I had to solve the truss for the applied load. Here my applied load is the horizontal direction 400, and then I had to solve the entire truss again for a unit load applied along that displacement, uh, displacement that type of displacement which I want to find out. So here this K system of forces will be a unit load applied along AC because I want to find out the displacement of member AC. So here I'm applying for, this is my P system of forces, this is my K system of forces. Here it's written as N and L, or small n and capital N, I think, but the concept is same. This is the P system of forces, this is the K system of forces, and for both I had to solve the member forces in all the members. I needed the length of all the members, and I multiplied these, and I added them, and I divided them by AE. So this is what is being done here. I solve this entire member, this entire system. I solve this entire system, and I apply this formula sigma. This is basically pkl by ae. The notation is a little different here. So delta AC is, and we did it algebraically, so that is minus 11200 by ae. Ae is said to be constant for all of these, so you can take it outside the summation. Now, to solve the small FACAC, we require application of the real unit forces acting on the curtains of the member AC and virtual unit forces acting on the curtains of the member AC. So, ironically, this is an ideal situation where the force is applied in the force applied is the same kind of force that we have to apply in the K system of forces as well. So here the P system of forces actually is a pair of unit loads applied here, and the K system of forces is exactly the same. So this is basically small n square by L by A. We get this, and we substitute this into equation 1 that we got. It is my, this is, see, A gets cancelled out because it is in the denominator of both, and FAC, which came as an unknown here. Look at this equation. This equation is delta AC is the displacement here. FACAC is the flexibility coefficient we get from this structure, and FAC is the magnitude of the force in AC, which I assume to be unknown. So when I have delta AC and small FACAC, I can find capital FAC, which is the member force in AC, and I get it along with sign. I get it positive, so it will, since the numerical result is positive, AC is subjected to tension as we assume. Using this result, the forces in other members can be found by equilibrium using the method of joints. Is there any question on this method? This is the method of consistent deformations. It is a force method that is used to solve a truss. Okay, so this is a summary of the steps. Procedure for analysis: we first determine the degree of indeterminacy. The redundant is the support reactions and or the forces in the bars. So see, if you, that is why we need to find out the degree of internal and external indeterminacy. If I see that the structure has a degree of internal indeterminacy, I cannot remove a support reaction and proceed with the problem. I have to remove a member. I have to identify which member is redundant, and I have to remove that and consider it as unknown and proceed. And if it has a degree of external indeterminacy, I have to look at one of the support reactions and take it as unknown. So number of redundant forces is degree of indeterminacy. We follow similar steps that are used for beams and frames, but use the following compatibility equations. If there are two redundant, delta 10 plus small delta 11 xi x1 plus delta 12 x2 is 0. Or settlement, forget this, I don't think it's very important, the settlement part, it's for very high level problems. Delta 20 is delta 21 x1 plus delta 22 x2, where these are the like the formula given. Delta 10 is sigma SUIL by EA. So S is the original system. S is the applied is the primary structure basically. U1 is the K system m- made by removal of the force in the for this like the first redundant. U2 is for the second redundant. U2 is the forces developed in the structure due to unit load along the second redundant, and this is due to the temperature term, and this is I think this is like the temperature term is not likely to be needed. So delta 1 1 is u1 square, which we got in the second, see in the second part that we do to find out the displacement, that flexibility coefficient. We see that we end up solving the same structure twice, so there is a square term that comes here, delta 1 1 and delta 2 2, and in delta 2 1 it's u1 u2 l by ea. So these formulas, these look complicated, but they are like if you apply them you will see they are very intuitive, and these formulas you definitely don't have to remember. Just go by step as we have done, and it won't be difficult. This is analysis of truss, again by consistent method of consistent deformations. Let's see. The structure is indeterminate to the first degree, and this degree of indeterminacy is external, right? So there is one support reaction here, one here, and two here. So it is 1 degree externally indeterminate. So I have to to make it redundant. Suppose I remove this roller support. I remove this, so this is my primary stress, and in the secondary structure I will have 1 kilonewton here, and this applied 40 I will remove. So in my primary truss, I remove one of the reactions, and in my secondary truss, I remove the applied loads and only apply a unit load in the direction or sense of my removed redundant reaction. The truss is indeterminate to the first degree, so there is only one redundant. It can be solved by removing the reaction at C. This is solved in a tabular form. I take each of the members, I write down the lengths, and I solve the primary structure. From that, when I solve the primary structure, I get these values S. Then when I solve this unit structure, I get some force values here, which I write here. And from my formula, I'll need to compute these two quantities, SU1L and U1 square L, like just like in the previous question. See, this is my SU1L kind of thing. S is the primary structure written capital N here, U1 is the small n, and here I need N square L. So that is what is, these are the two tables I need, SU1L and U1 square L. I get them, I add all of them, and EA is constant for all, so it will get cancelled eventually, and I get X1, my unknown, which is the support reaction at, now I get a negative. So how do I interpret it? See, when I had removed this support reaction, I had provided a unit load in the downward direction. Now, since I get a negative value here, I have to assume that the actual reaction developed at C is in the upward direction. So Cy is 6.63 kN in the upward direction. The remaining reactions can simply be found by applying the equilibrium equation. See, once I have the magnitude of the redundant reaction, the entire truss becomes a determinate one, both externally and internally. So once you have it, you can just treat it as an applied force, and then you can solve the entire truss. You start by solving the support reactions, and then you can go by method of joints and find the member forces in all the members. This is again a similar kind of example, so I won't go into the details, but it is the same type. So that's all about the method of consistent deformation applied on trusses. Are there any questions? Okay. So if there are no questions, you can leave. I will wait for a while, and if you any of your questions. Yes,
कोई क्वेश्चन ही लीव कर दूं?
योर वॉइस इज तुम्हारा वॉइस बहुत धीरे आ रहा है।
मैम कोई क्वेश्चन ही है, लीव कर दूं?
हाँ हाँ हाँ, लीव कर सकते हो तुम।
ठीक है, थैंक यू मैम।
हाँ, थैंक यू। class is over. Do you have any questions? You can ask.